and director of the Livable Cities Lab. In addition to everyone in attendance today, we also have an audience participating online. So I thought now would be a good time to get rolling. Before I begin, there are a number of distinguished guests that I would like to recognize, and I will be recognizing folks throughout the presentation today. But I would like to recognize Orange County Supervisor Katrina Foley, Newport Beach Councilperson Joy Brenner, Susan Pritchard, Trustee, Board of Education from the City of La Habra, Marianne Guido from Irvine Councilperson Larry Agron's office, Jared Hill, who is from Mayor Pro Tem Anthony Quah here in Irvine, and Magnolia Marino from Congressperson Lou Carrera's office. So before I begin and take you through the rest of the afternoon, along with my colleague Emily Owens, it gives me a great honor and privilege to introduce to you our Dean of Social Ecology, John Gould, who has joined us fairly recently, but has really brought an important energy and an importance, reaffirming the importance of social justice and many of the pillars of the School of Social Ecology. So I ask you please for a warm welcome for Dean John Gould.
Thanks, George, and thank you all for coming out today. It really is wonderful to see so many of you here for this release of an important report on an issue that, of course, is seminal to Orange County. As George said, I started here only 5 months ago. I've only been in Orange County and at UCI since January, but this has been my dream job and my dream location for many years. And people ask me why, and they ask me in particular, why a School of Social Ecology? And my guess is, if I asked for a show of hands for how many of you felt comfortable defining what a School of Social Ecology is, we'd probably get 5 or 10 of you. I would hope we'd get George and Emily to be able to answer that. We are the only School of Social Ecology in the country, and there's a really good reason for that. Because what we are all about is an integrative approach to solving social problems. We believe that it's not enough to simply ask about someone's individual health. Why, for example, a student is feeling anxious or someone else is depressed, why someone is or is not aging well. We say that if you're going to be looking at the health of the individual, you need to be looking at the health of the community. Is there housing available? What's crime like? What's the economic situation like? Can people find employment? What's transportation like? And if you're going to ask about the health of the community, you need to also be asking about the health of the environment. So we are all about an integrative approach, but we're an integrative approach to solving social problems. We do very high level research, but it's not research that simply goes into a book or an article. It is not, notwithstanding the fact the university does sit on a hill. We don't think of ourselves as simply sitting up on a hill up there by ourselves. Our school in particular is about engaging with the community, engaging with partners to try to solve social problems. And being here in Orange County is exactly the place to do it. When I got here at first, someone told me a statistic that I had a hard time believing, but I went and looked it up and it's absolutely true. If Orange County were a city, this would be the 3rd largest city in America. And we have all of the challenges and all of the opportunities that are faced elsewhere. Indeed, in many ways, Orange County is a lab for addressing a number of the challenges that face urban environments and gives us an opportunity to implement the kinds of solutions that can address them. So for me, this is exactly the place and exactly the moment for social scientists to be interacting with members of the community, with policymakers and practitioners to try to address important questions. And indeed, that is what the Livable Cities Lab, which George directs, is all about. It's about taking top-tier academic research and applying it to real-world issues. It's about being in partnership with the community, And it's also about making change to address society's stickiest problems. And if we were to make a list of some of those stickiest problems, affordable housing wouldn't be nearly at the top of the list. As I said, I've only been here 5 months. It's the issue I've heard over and over and over again in talking to people, whether it's about a workforce housing, whether it's affordable housing, whatever the term is that people are using. It is the issue I hear over and over again. And it does not even take that much of imagination, although we bring a lot to it, to realize that housing and public safety are absolutely essential to maintaining a healthy and sustainable community. So when we hear for the presentation today, when we hear George and Emily talking, I hope that you will appreciate that the Livable Cities Lab is exactly the place to go within Orange County to bring that kind of research, to find that academic partner to address these kinds of sticky problems that face urban life. And we hope that you will look to them and to the School of Social Ecology as your partner in accessing all that UCI has to offer. Because if we're doing our job right, what we're doing is we are training the next generation of change makers, and we are engaged in scholarship that's going to help improve the community. So with that in mind, I again want to thank all of you for being here today. I also want to thank the Irvine City Council for allowing us these august chambers. And I want to turn it back to George, who is going to present these really fascinating findings. And I think they are the kinds of findings that are going to do exactly what our school is about, which is to work in partnership with many of you to address one of these sticky problems. So thank you very much.
Thank you, John. The dean told me before this began, I told him, when he said, don't mess up. I said, I actually scripted stuff. He said, I bet you can't stay on script. And I'm pretty sure like a summer month of support and a course release are in the balance of me staying on. So I'm going to read very slowly and not make any mistakes today. But in all seriousness, oh, there it is. Nope. You win. I'm off script already. So as Dean Gould already mentioned with regards to our mission statement, it's built around the notion of providing our stakeholders, our community, our city leaders with independent, rigorous, unbiased research that they can use. Speaking broadly, our two topics that we want to focus on are public safety and housing in Orange County. I myself am trained more on the public safety side, and I will allude to that a little bit later. But we believe strongly that these are foundational issues. Housing is important. Safety is important for building sustainable, healthy communities, the kinds of places that we all want to live in, and the kinds of places that everyone deserves to live in. I also make this promise. Our recommendations that emerge from the work that we do will be driven by the data. As you'll see today, we will present what we found independent, no agenda, and that is, I think, one of the most important things any university can do. Let me tell you a little bit about our research portfolio. Right now, on the public safety side, my colleague in my department, Amanda Geller, and I are engaged with the city of Anaheim to look at the process, implementation, impact of their critical response, community critical response teams. Now, the city received some funding in the early stages of the pandemic to think about ways that one could lessen the impact on institutional settings, including jails, by trying some innovative outreach in the community. And to that end, the city of Anaheim, the police working with the police department and partnering with CityNet, have put together the HOT team, the homeless outreach team, specialized, well-trained officers who patrol the areas that are impacted by individuals experiencing homelessness, by individuals who may be in some other form of distress, and moving away from a culture and a response of hook 'em and book 'em in taking people to jail. They refer in partnership with CityNet. So that is underway. In another week, I'm fortunate that I'll be hosting a number of national foundations to hopefully make the Livable Cities Lab a center for the collection, storage, and analysis of gun violence. The gun violence that plagues our urban cities that may not get the attention that our mass shootings have been, but cumulatively have a much, much, much larger impact. And that's really my area of expertise. And I tell you that because it's going to make sense in a few minutes. On the housing side, our very first production was in partnership with Mercy House. And we oversaw the production of a report, sort of a process report with regards to how they engaged with the faith-based community, developers, city officials in trying to repurpose land towards building affordable housing. And then, of course, there's the impact study and the reason that we're all here today. If you like what you hear today, and Dean Gould has already alluded to this, if you see opportunities for us to partner, please engage, please reach out to me. I take a little bit of pride in the fact that just in the time that we sent our invitations to everyone, that we have had 2 cities reach out and say, hey, we have this issue that we would like you to look at. So that's the sort of thing. The CCRT, the impact study are just some of the examples of what we can do with you. Notice I said with you and not necessarily just for you. I don't know if it was Charlie Brown or one of the other Peanuts. It could have been Winnie the Pooh for all I remember correctly. Something about it's not the destination, but it's the people that you journey with. And that has been incredibly important for this journey that started a long, long time ago in an era pre-pandemic. And so I ask you to please bear with me just for a couple of moments as I talk through this. I'd like to begin by the staff and individuals at the local police departments that updated data that we needed to provide this. It was not always easy because of staff shortages, because of changes in technology. But we were very fortunate in receiving a lot of support in the sharing of data from local law enforcement agencies. Something that I could probably say over and over is that the executive summary is on our website, which you can get to by, what do they call those? Yeah. One of those codes. It'll take you right to the report. And, so all of the details, including number of housing units, number of police departments, years of data, and so forth, are available there. So with that, let me also thank all of the folks in the housing authorities. Our collection of data really started with the list that the Orange County Housing Authority already maintained. We worked with folks at Santa Ana and Garden Grove and Anaheim in our identification of affordable housing. So thank you to them. And then I had a couple real spiritual guides on this effort. Bex Highhold is celebrating her birthday somewhere, hopefully warm and sunny, but she was a big help on this, and also formerly of the United Way, Cash Rutherford. Cash Rutherford was really helpful in engaging with the police departments and other political leaders throughout the county, so I want to thank them. Remember, I'm a gun expert, violence expert, and that's sort of my policy area. I have published on the impacts of crime on housing and housing on crime, but I'm not an urban planner. I've not been trained in that area, and so I don't want to sell myself as something that I'm not. But boy, did I learn a lot from Natalie Ryder and George Searcy. So thank you both for the crash education that I received early on. One of our graduate students couldn't make it today, but one of our graduate students, Clarissa Iliff, I wanted to make sure I gave a special shout out, but amazing, amazing job. And then finally, I'm really good, and my wife would probably argue that I'm too good at not bringing my work home with me. But I think my wife would also confirm, and you can ask her after the presentation, that this work was so important and so consuming to what we hope to achieve through the LCL, that she saw the stress and she saw the happiness. So thanks to my wife as well. And finally, even though Dean Gold has thanked the city of Irvine for allowing us to use the chambers here today, I hope it's not lost on anyone our location today and the importance of this location. Sure, it's been my home for the last 22 years. Sure, as some say, Orange County and Irvine are joined at the hip and have grown up both together over the last few decades. But let's not forget one other thing. The city of Irvine has demonstrated that you can have more affordable housing units than any other municipality in the county and still be voted the safest city in America for 16 straight years. Okay, so that's my thank yous, and I do appreciate you bearing with me, but let's go ahead and jump into the results of the study. John Hipp is not here today, but John Hipp performed the analysis that I will present on his behalf on crime in affordable housing. Seth Williams was very instrumental in helping put that data together. Clarissa and Professor Emily Owens, who you'll hear from shortly, really led the impact of affordable housing on home prices. And I basically did nothing. But I am hugely indebted. And it has taken a lot of time to get here, mainly because it took a lot of time to put the data into shape. But the amount of work that my colleagues have done in a relative short amount of time was basically heroic, and I really appreciate that. look, we know housing is foundational to creating healthy communities. Most of us in this room know that we are facing a shortage of affordable housing in the magnitude of 65,000 housing units. I think I read that from the Orange County Business Association. 65,000, that's a lot. Why aren't we building more? Because there's a lot of barriers to building affordable housing. We have regulations, we have environmental impact, we have rising costs, we have labor shortages. Now with the pandemic, we have supply issues, okay? So we have a lot of new barriers, we have a lot of long-standing barriers, and one of the barriers that we have, well, that many of you have faced, is the concern of local residents that if you build that in my neighborhood, you are going to impact crime in a way that I don't want, and you're going to destroy my housing prices. Now, we began, if you go to our executive summary, we point out that Chicago, the suburbs of Washington, D.C., Charlotte, Cleveland, Austin, San Diego have all done studies over the last several decades to address these types of concerns. But that's not enough. And it's not enough because people will always want to privilege the uniqueness of their neighborhood. That was them, but it's not Orange County, and we're different. We can call it Orange County exceptionalism if you want, it doesn't matter. But people, these are legitimate concerns and they should be addressed. So I'm glad that we're now to the stage where we will have a study conducted in Orange County that adds to an existing body of research. So what is our research question? Affordable housing, good for neighborhoods, good for property values. That's all we're here to address today. That's all of our study looks for. We're not proposing solutions beyond that because we don't have the data to speak beyond that. So I'm sorry about this. There we go. Our definition of affordable housing, what we included in this study was basically everything but emergency shelters, places that are available because of income restrictions or other special populations. At the end of the day, including starting with the data from the Orange County Housing Authority's list, I think we identified 372, 373 addresses for the properties throughout the county. This is what it looks like. You all know Orange County. The first thing you could say is, yes, it's everywhere. Everybody has some. But maybe some people have a little bit more. So I'm really, again, thank you to Clarissa. She showed me this map and I'm like, yes. In my field of crime, we like to do hotspot maps. She came up with a little density map of where it's located. Now, again, this is location, not necessarily the number of units or anything like that, but it's just the address location. So I think you know enough about the story of Orange County to know that there are neighborhoods, there are communities that are disproportionately impacted. And I think you know enough about Orange County to probably also realize that the places that are disproportionately impacted, the difference between the census block groups that do have affordable housing and the places that do not have affordable housing, well, the places that do tend to be a little lower on the socioeconomic scale. maybe a little bit more density in the housing, and maybe English not as a first language, or populations that don't identify as non-Hispanic white. What does this have to do with the siting of affordable housing? I think it's strong evidence that we should give some credence to the concerns and the validity of deconcentrating throughout the county, especially in light of what we're going to show you now. So with that, I would very much like to turn it over to my colleague, Emily Owens, who will take us through the impact of affordable housing on property values. I'll be back.
Thanks, George. So as George mentioned, my name is Professor Emily Owens. My main seat at UCI is in the Department of Criminology, Law, and Society. I also have an appointment in the economics department because I'm an economist. And as an economist, what I really want to know was how affordable housing affects the financial security of the local residents who live near these sites, right? And particularly the local residents who, like most of us, hold most of their wealth, most of their financial assets in their homes. So in order to answer this question, Clarissa and I obtained data from Zillow on every residential home that was purchased in Orange County between 2001 and 2020. Right? And what we wanted to do was focus on homes that were sold in neighborhoods, really technically census tracts, where affordable housing opened, and we observed at least 3 years of homes sold before affordable housing opened in that neighborhood, and 3 years of homes sold after that affordable housing opened in that neighborhood. Right? And then we wanted to say, all right, well, in these places that are within 2 miles of an affordable housing site, how did home values in those same places change before and after? Now, obviously, for those of you who caught the first part of what I said, we're looking between 2001 and 2020 and looking at how home values change as affordable housing opens over time. And there are many other things that happened to the Orange County housing market over the past 2 decades, right? And so we wanted to really isolate the impact of opening affordable housing from all the other crazy Orange County crashes in 2008 and the recent explosion in home prices, and really focus in on how did affordable housing change sales prices and really home values in the places where it located. And so what we did with all of our Zillow data was take a look not at homes that were located near affordable housing, but first start by examining how did homes 3 miles or more away from any affordable housing site change over time. So in every month between 2001 and 2020, we calculated, all right, well, what are home sales in these sort of far away Orange County places going for? And then when we observe a home sold near affordable housing, let's take a look at that home sales price, but really focus on the difference between the value of this particular home and the value of all other homes sold elsewhere in Orange County in that particular month. And we refer to this as an adjusted sales price or adjusted home value, because it really is focusing on the change in sales prices near affordable housing relative to all of the other Orange County housing market craziness that's happening. All right, and so we can be more confident to say this is really affordable housing and not something else that's changing over time. All right, and ultimately, what we found when we compared the sales price of homes sold in the 3 years after affordable housing opened to the 3 years before affordable housing opened was that while there may always be concerns about affordable housing lowering the value of someone's home or lowering the value at which they can sell their home, the data don't really support that. In fact, if you look at the immediate neighbors of affordable housing sites, people who live within 1/5 of a mile of the affordable housing unit, their homes sell for, on average, almost $16,000 more in real 2020 dollars than the homes that were sold in those same places 3 years before the affordable housing opened. And there's margins of error around that, but a couple of hundred dollars relative to $16,000 increase in sales price. As we start to look at homes that are sited about 1/2 mile away from the affordable housing, we also observe an increase in value of about $14,000, a little bit less of an increase in value than the immediate neighbors. And as we start to move and look at houses in sort of bigger and bigger rings away, we still consistently see that homes sold, up to 2 miles away from the affordable housing are sold for slightly higher, for $10,000 more after the affordable housing is open versus before. Right? Now, this idea of an immediate impact being largest for immediate neighbors, and one that's positive, actually, as opposed to negative, is really, again, as I put on my applied social scientist hat, something that I would expect to see, right? Affordable housing should have the biggest impact immediately where it is located. And that effect we might think would dissipate over time if we think the data is picking up really something real. So as I mentioned, this is really the take-home story, but we had data on all homes sold in Orange County between 2001 and 2020. This is sort of what the data are. And we could also do a little bit more with this data. So what I'm showing you right now is something that's actually called a gravity map. 0, the beginning of this graph, is homes that are really right next to an affordable housing site. Right? And as you move to your left, what we're looking at is homes that are sold increasingly further and further away, up to 2 miles away from this affordable housing site. And what the line shows you is the average adjusted sales price of all of these homes in Orange County sold in the 3 years before affordable housing is located at point 0, at the center of this gravity map. And so what you can observe is that affordable housing tends to be located in places where homes are not selling for very much. And as you move away from that affordable housing site, particularly once you get to be about an 84/5 of a mile away from the affordable housing site, now you start to get home sales that are roughly equal to the Orange County average. Right? After the affordable housing project opens, and we look at what home sales look like 3 years afterwards, what you can observe is that at every point, at every distance, homes are selling for more. But the biggest increase in sales values are for these immediate neighbors. And as you get further and further and further away from the location of the affordable housing, the increase in value kind of gets smaller and smaller and smaller and peters out. Now, for those of you who have some history with real estate, you know that sales price is important, but if you really want to assess a home's value, what you look at is not total sales price, but price per square foot, right? That's how you calculate comps and think about what sort of comparable properties are worth. And so we can also do that, is look at price per square foot, similarly adjusted for everything that's going on in Orange County over this time period. So if we look at, on average, price per square foot of homes sold in Orange County in the 3 years before affordable housing opens, right? Again, you see that where the affordable housing is located or will be located in the future, homes are less valuable. And as you move away from that eventual site of affordable housing, home values, price per square foot, increase very rapidly. After affordable housing is sited, it looks like the value of homes immediately nearby go up by a lot and actually kind of start to equalize in value with some of their further out neighborhoods. Right? It looks like the sort of value of homes immediately in the vicinity of affordable housing are kind of equaling out with their neighbors. All right. Now, as George alluded to, the people intrinsically we're human, right? Feel that we are all exceptional, and Orange County is such a vast place, and there's a lot of differences across Orange County in what neighborhoods look like. And so the last thing that I'm going to talk about is sort of variation within this average home value change. And so what we did was we took every affordable housing site in our data and matched it up with actually 2010 American Community Survey data. So this is census data from before a lot of our affordable home projects were put in place. All right. And then what we did was rank all of the projects that we observed by that neighborhood's census tract's poverty rate in 2010. And then we focused on just those affordable housing sites that were constructed in the poorest places that affordable housing is constructed in Orange County, right? The bottom 25th percentile of poverty rates. So even in these high poverty neighborhoods, right, affordable housing is located in the places where homes are sold for the lowest amount of money. Right? So even within a neighborhood, affordable housing tends to be located in the places where homes are worth the least in total. After affordable housing is constructed, though, in these low-income, high-poverty tracts, again, you see an increase in value, right? That is most captured by the immediate neighbors of the affordable housing unit. Turning to true home value, price per square foot, in the highest poverty places where affordable housing in Orange County has been cited, you see again this same pattern. It's not just that homes are sold for less, they're really the least valuable where affordable housing is located. And there's a very steep gradient as you move further and further away. Houses quickly become more valuable. Once affordable housing is placed in this area, though, the playing field kind of levels off, where the people who live right next to affordable housing have the biggest increase in the value of their homes. And everyone kind of benefits, actually. But as you move further and further away, the people who live 2 miles from the affordable housing, don't benefit quite as much as the people who live right next door. Now, I'm going to turn to the least poor places where affordable housing is located. So these are now areas that are in that sort of top quartile of income. Now here, it's a little bit of an interesting different graph. And these are the wealthiest places where affordable housing is cited. And so you can see even within a mile, if you look within a mile of where the affordable housing is located, you still see, homes are going for less where affordable housing is located. As you get even further away from these low poverty places, you start to get this reduction in home sales prices because we're moving out of the best neighborhoods, right? Now, after we place affordable housing in these areas, the total sales price of these homes has a really different pattern, right? There's two things that are really interesting about this graph. So first, you're seeing a different story about the impact for immediate neighbors, where the sales price of homes sold just next to affordable housing is actually lower than the homes sold before the affordable housing was put in place. I also want to point out that as you get further and further away, the people who benefit appear to change. In fact, if you look at the total sales price, the biggest increase in total sales price occurs like 2/3 of a mile away from the affordable housing and doesn't get smaller, as opposed to every other pattern we've seen where you see a big effect nearby that gets sort of slower as you move further and further away. This was a little bit of a puzzle to us, and so we turned away from home sales again towards home value. I'm looking at price per square foot. So if we just look at the price per square foot, we see this similar pattern, right? Where even in the lowest poverty tracts, affordable housing is going to be located in places where the homes have the lowest value. It increases, then we get out of the low poverty tracts and it falls again. Once we add affordable housing, this now looks much more like the pattern that we've been observing. In terms of price per square foot, there is a really big increase in these low poverty neighborhoods immediately adjacent to the the affordable housing. Now, what this tells me is that the homes that are sold before affordable housing is opened and after affordable housing is opened is different. They're smaller. The homes that happen to be sold after affordable housing opens up in these low poverty neighborhoods are smaller per square foot. And so the sales price for these houses is lower. But if you look at value that real estate agents use to say, okay, is this a comparable home? Those smaller homes become more valuable in the low poverty tracts after the affordable housing opens. So to conclude, there really, if you look at the data, if you look at really, I believe Zillow thinks it has the universe of homes that are sold in Orange County. If you look at the data, there's really not evidence to support the idea that building affordable housing negatively affects people's financial security. That's just not what the data appear to show us, which is consistent with the stories from other jurisdictions across the United States. And really the people who benefit the most are the people who live closest to the affordable housing. That's consistently where we see the biggest increase in the value per square foot of private residential properties. Right? And even though there are a lot of differences that I think are worth continuing to explore in the local neighborhood impact of affordable housing. If we look at the highest and lowest poverty places where affordable housing has been built in Orange County, if you look at value, price per square foot, the effects really are not that different. Right? Even in these, again, most extreme places where affordable housing has been built. All right, and that is a brief summary of our Zillow analysis of real estate. And I will turn it back over to George to talk about crime.
Thank you, Emily. Of course, once I go through the crime results, we'll absolutely open it up for questions to the audience. Again, we have this question of what is the impact of citing affordable housing on crime? And so we looked at the kinds of crimes that people are most concerned about, all right? Burglary, motor theft of vehicle, theft of motor vehicles, assault, robbery, larceny. There's probably one more up there I'm forgetting. No, I think I got them all. So, and John, again, John did this analysis. John followed the same strategy as did Emily. We agreed on it in terms of binning the data and looking before and after and in different distance bands around affordable housing. Okay. We also looked at overall patterns of crime in Orange County. We looked if that was different in high poverty neighborhoods. We looked if that was different in low poverty neighborhoods. So once again, go to the report and you can see every single chart. But let me highlight a couple things here for you. This is what the trend looks like as we move away from the location of affordable housing in the period before it opens, the 3-year period before it opens. So that's pre. I'm hoping when I put this button, the blue line will be below it. And it is, for the most part. It's basically identical at the quarter to a half mile, all right? No impact. If any impact, it's positive. And so that was for aggravated assaults. If we look now at robbery, we again, fingers crossed, we want to see the blue line drop below the red line. And voila, we see that after you open affordable housing, we have a suppression in the number of robberies on average throughout the entire county. What about burglary? Same story. In fact, a bigger gap. When you open affordable housing, we see that robberies also go down in this distance band. I could show you about 6 more crimes and sliced in different ways between high and low, but I'm not going to. Whoops. You can find that on the website. But let's take a look at one other crime that people care about, and that is motor vehicle theft. All right. So here's what we want. Here's what we have, the pattern as we move away from affordable housing in the period before opening affordable housing. And again, we want to see that blue line below there, and it's higher. Okay. Now, I'm sure there were some folks in the audience that would prefer that I bury this slide, but I think it makes a really, really, really good point, because it's not just statistical significance or difference, it's the magnitude of that effect. For motor vehicle theft and some of the other property crimes, you would get, the difference suggests that you would have 1 more motor vehicle thefts over 10 years, okay? Imperceptible differences on the impact of crime after you open affordable housing. Okay, so don't be afraid to show something that is bad or in the wrong direction when you can easily show that, in essence, the magnitude is zero. Because I don't think anybody can perceive 1/10 of more car theft in their community. So that's where we are. That's the story that we have. And so what is our conclusion? That affordable housing is good for communities in Orange County. It's good for public safety in Orange County. It's good for property values and home sale values in Orange County. And with that, thank you. And Emily and I would be happy to take some questions. Well, thank you. Thank you all for coming. No, any questions? Yes, Grace. Yeah, let me say a couple of things about that. This is the beginning, not an end, okay? The Livable Cities Lab will produce a series of briefs and research notes over the summer. What we have, because of the difficulty in pulling the data together, is the executive summary of the big picture. We can slice the data any way somebody would like us to slice the data. Remember, we have home sales from 2001 through 2020. We need 3 years on each end. We have housing that has been built in the 1970s in Orange County. So we start losing statistical power the more that we slice the data. That does not mean that we cannot look at that. We can look at any of the ways that we commonly categorize affordable housing, and we will do that, but we're not prepared to comment on at this moment. I will say, in doing the literature for review for this, that San Diego had that same concern. The researchers did a survey of perceptions and found that, affordable housing is okay as long as it's not for them. And we know what that means. But when they did the analysis, there was no negative impact by housing type. The LIHTC studies that are done in Chicago and Northern Virginia, a lot of these are very low. Also, I would think a fair amount of what we would call permanent supportive housing and home housing for special populations. So I'd be surprised if we see anything that differs significantly from this story. I would be more concerned if the differences were wildly, if they were wild, the analyses and results were wildly dissimilar between the high poverty places and the low poverty places. That would concern me, and that we really need to dig deeper on type of housing. But I think because we're finding a pretty consistent story across different kinds of communities, that should make us feel a little better. Yes. Hi, Elizabeth. Yeah. I think there is a very consistent story in terms of, I'm sorry to speak for Emily, on housing values, on price per square foot. It's good everywhere. The value of your house goes up, okay? The value of your house goes up. I'm sorry, Emily, can you?
Be at the mic as well. Yeah, I think that something that made me believe the data that it was something reasonable is the nuance that in terms of home values, price per square foot, the biggest beneficiaries are the people who are closest to the affordable housing. Right. And that's really the people within a fifth of a mile, the immediate vicinity benefit the most in terms of home values. That's the nuance. So it's good. It doesn't look like we see losers, but the biggest beneficiaries are if it's in your backyard. George, you taking questions? Sure. Why the biggest beneficiaries are the ones closest? I think the answer has to do with, and this comes up a lot actually in economics. Oh, wrong way. Like the contribution of our field period to a lot of criminology is that focusing on this any of the pre-graphs, because they all kind of look the same, right? Affordable housing, like most policies, are allocated not at random, but put in places for a reason. So affordable housing improves value because the counterfactual, what it replaces, is frequently not something that great. Right? So it's an old hotel, right? Or a house that has been where property ownership isn't clear and it's been abandoned, right? And so by having new construction, you're not just dropping new construction somewhere, you're dropping it in a place that really needed help. This is investment, and that's positive. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'll start with your last point first, and that is if we start doing a specific location, we're doing anecdotes, not science. And so we have to be very careful about that. Like we absolutely could say, here's what happened around this one, and here's what happened around this one, and so forth. But then you lose any ability to generalize about that. I think one of the important things for Emily is she took out time basically from the analysis by smoothing out the amount of variation. So it's any 3-year period before and after the opening of housing. Or 2002.
That's a slightly different question. I don't think that we did do a series of, I thought, kind of sparse data, sort of time series analyses type effects, which is 1 year after, 2 years after, 3 years after, 4 years after, but we have not looked, I think, at different time periods. So housing placed after 2015, for example. right? Clarissa's nodding. Yeah, that's correct. So we haven't done that. In terms of percentage changes, we did do that. It's the same story. It doesn't really matter. I think it's an interesting question whether or not you think that when people have their reactions to affordable housing, if the question of whether or not you show lead with percentage changes versus level dollars changes is really a question about, does someone with like a larger house care more about this? Or someone with a smaller house care more about this? Or is it people with lower valued houses who care more about this question? This is like a whole field of psychology. It really doesn't matter for the purposes of our analysis. The graphs I could show you in percentage terms would look almost identical. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, something I think would be valuable that I might speak to that is doing a city by city analysis, which is easy to do.
And I'll add on to that, and then we're going to go to Milo, and then we'll come over back to you. And so if we would have shown the percent changes for crime, there'd all be flat lines, and there'd be very little room in between both of the lines. So we chose to show it this way. We also did rates, but the rates, when you change, there's very few people and there's very few crimes within these bands. So the way that we presented the crime data, I think, gave us the clearest, truest picture of that. But Emily and I have already had a discussion. One of the other questions that we anticipated today is not just different type, but what about the number of units, right? And that is definitely something that we should take a look at going forward as well. Milo? Thank you, Milo.
Forward against the bias that's out there that I've experienced by going to council meetings. For people that need affordable housing and to get them moving forward from housing.
So for those watching on the internet, the question is, what can we do about South County in order to get this message to them so that they are not quite so resistant to citing affordable housing? Was that a polite way of saying that? Yes. Okay. The Livable City Lab would love to partner with the people like Elizabeth and anybody in this room to take that message to council, get us meetings with your elected officials, your folks in planning. Use us. We will partner with you. That's what we want to become. I think I just volunteered every free moment of the rest of my life, but I signed up for this. Was there a question over here? Oh, okay. Any more questions? Oh, Elizabeth, yeah. Oh, hi. Yeah, so this is where me not being a city planner and understanding everything about the siting over the last 5 decades of affordable housing in Orange County. I'm not able to discuss that. The good news is we have a Department of Public Policy and Urban Planning and Public Policy at UCI, and can definitely engage and with their expertise to provide additional insights on what is really an important question. Elizabeth, let me go. Oh, well, can we, let me get a couple more questions, but yeah, so, and then go ahead. So the question is, what if we looked only at Irvine or took Irvine out of the mix? Does Irvine weigh disproportionately in the results? Emily?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is part of why doing a city by city level analysis would be interesting, because the different cities in Orange County operate in different ways, right? And the nature of where affordable housing is located and what role affordable housing has played sort of in the vision of the city really varies. You know, in my own previous research that focused on the impacts of LIHTC funded, so low income housing tax credit funded housing across the United States and the impacts on crime at the county level, what we did was really estimate how revitalizing the most distressed parts of a county, so really focusing low-income housing, tax credit, subsidized housing in what are called qualified census tracts, so disproportionately poor census tracts affected everyone, compared to affordable housing that was more or LIHTC funded housing that was not concentrated in the most distressed areas. And that analysis just of county level crime rates found that revitalizing the most distressed areas, and this actually goes back to an earlier question, was really good for the county as a whole. So having low income, improving the quality of rental housing in the most distressed areas in the county was good for the county as a whole in terms of crime rates. We found also very similar things where motor vehicle thefts seemed to go up when you had more LIHTC funded housing and qualified census tracts versus dispersed low-income housing. That was a nationwide study. It didn't look at home values. It focused only on MSAs that were really growing rapidly, where there was changes in the sort of qualifications of census tracts over census years. So I think it would be interesting and informative to do a study that sort of exploited the different patterns of affordable housing construction in Orange County, because there is such variation, but we haven't done it yet. That's a great idea moving forward. Yeah. Yes.
So the question, again, is whether or not we controlled for unit size. Oh, yeah. Yes. So there was a question about ownership versus renting, and multi versus single family. Again, there was none of the affordable housing is owned. It's all rentals that we included. And again, no, we have not in this analysis controlled for the number of units, but this is definitely something that we will. And I hope in repeating and answering that question that I may have answered El Segundo's question. But if I haven't, I'm going to go back and read the chat and I'll come back to answer a couple of, there's a lot of great questions on the chat. I'll be right back. Yes, sir. So we did violent and property, what are considered part one crimes. Now, I'm sorry. The question is, did we have other kinds of crime? Everything that we had is in the report. Now, one of the things that we had actually, at the suggestion of a local law enforcement leader who then never gave us any data, suggested that we should have 911 calls, we should have this and all of these different quality of life calls. The problem is, again, one, partially because of the time period that we were doing that, and two, partially because of the ability to share and pull data effortlessly. Not everybody can give us the same data. That's a good question, but that would take a different level of data collection, the sort of stuff that I'm hoping to get funded so that the LCL will at least have lethal domestic, but that's a different level of data extraction that we would have to ask the police department for. Okay, yes, you've been so patient.
They're not all low-income housing tax credit funded projects. That actually was something we started with and then build it out.
It
George,
may
go
have
ahead.
been clear from the answer, but no, it's not all LIHTC. It's all affordable housing in Orange County.
Yeah, so that just in my reference to the earlier question about the differences between Irvine and other places, I happen to know something about LIHTC funded rental housing, which is just a totally separate thing. Yeah, and on the crimes, we focused on the index crimes because that's what police departments generally make available. Domestic violence, rape, and murder sometimes, but definitely domestic violence and sexual assault. That information is not something police departments give out lightly. And so in terms of doing a spatial analysis that can include all cities, it's tricky to do that for privacy reasons, basically. Yeah. Yeah, open data portals are really like the lifeblood of a lot of applied social scientists. Yeah. I think Clarissa has spent, and Seth in particular, has spent a lot of time going through those. But yeah, if cities and states will sometimes sort of make surprising things available, right? If you ask. So any leads on that are helpful. And similarly with working, I'm happy to hear you say that you appreciate what we've produced. Part of the reason why our first pass didn't include specific types of affordable housing, but really look at affordable housing as a whole, was in response to the questions that were asked of us and the type of concerns that our funders had. And it really is that people tend to be concerned about affordable housing, period. As opposed to, well, what about this particular blend of affordable housing or this particular style of affordable housing? And since what we were hearing from our partners was that people are concerned about the impact of affordable housing, that's what we wanted to start with, right? What seems like the most pressing question? And so I think there's lots of really both practically and intellectually interesting further research to do about the types of affordable housing, how well it matches with the community, how different types of community respond to affordable housing. But the most pressing question that we wanted to start with was affordable housing, full stop. How do you respond to that question, which is the one that the public seems to be giving us?
So you always hate to cut anything off in, when we're having such an important debate and learning more. We are learning from you about additional analysis that we will want to do. And we hope you, again, this is an invitation to engage with us on specific projects going forward. But I would like to introduce Laura Archuleta, who is the leader of our LCL Leadership Board and President CEO of Jamboree Housing. And then, sorry. Do what? Oh, there we go. The last one.
Great. It's so true, right? It is so true. Well, thank you. And thank you so much, both of you, for all this research and the presentation. I am here today just to really thank the funders of this research. So they're up there for you, but we have American Family Housing, City of Anaheim, City of Garden Grove, Community Development Partners, Jamboree, Keith and Judy Swain Charitable Foundation, Orange County Community Foundation, Orange County Housing Authority, and National Community Renaissance of California. This research could not have been done without these funders, and I'm hoping that you were all thinking about ways to use the data that's now that the Livable Cities Lab now has, or maybe new data that you want them to go out and mine for you and go out and find, because the Livable Cities Lab is just so unique to have it right here in Orange County. The School of Social Ecology, as you heard earlier, it's unique in the whole country. It brings together really what quality of life is about, right? Crime, affordable housing, planning, environmental, all coming together. And so we're really hoping to get your support. I know the Livable Cities Lab needs support to keep going, so I'm putting in my pitch for that. I would say there's lots of reasons for the question on why Orange County's developed the way it does and why the housing's been placed how it's done. I've been doing it for 35 years now here in Orange County, and whole lots of from political to there was redevelopment at one day, one day back there to, of course, inclusionary housing opportunities. And so for those of you who are newer to the field and excited to jump in, us oldies are excited to encourage you and support you, because sometimes we get tired and we're happy to have you all here. So I do want to invite up now for some closing remarks the CEO Emeritus of Orange County Business Council, as well as the Orange County Mayor, as we call her, Miss Lucy Dunn, to kind of give some wrap-up thoughts.
Oh, this is so awesome. And the timing couldn't have been right on this study. Congratulations, George, Emily. Thank you very much for a great presentation. I used to be somebody famous, as Laura said, and working at Orange County Business Council, of course, housing was one of our top initiatives because we couldn't attract talent to fill jobs without a housing supply. But I share with you what I love so much about the study and the findings is once upon a time, I worked for Governor Schwarzenegger as state housing director of housing and community development. And back in 2004, I remember visiting city after city up and down the state. And one of the things we would talk about are the myths and facts of affordable housing. And one of the key points was not one study exists that says that building affordable housing increases crime in your neighborhood or depresses your own home value. And that's very personal to people, right? Because when we build new housing, it's all about change. It's about accepting newcomers and fear of change a lot of folks have, particularly when you already own a home, it's their major wealth creation device these days, right? They want to protect it. So having a study like this that says not only does it not impact crime or your housing value, it actually seems to help in many instances. This is a powerful tool in the toolbox that we all can use as we continue to advocate for doing the right thing and preparing for not only jobs creation, but the young people that are already here, are folks that are already here that are doubling and tripling up in housing. We have extra tools in the toolbox. So the last piece is I'm retired now, but in my retirement, I can't stay not busy. And so the Southern California Association of Governments, or SCAG, that's the regional planning agency for 191 cities from Ventura to Imperial, everybody except San Diego, right? Including Orange County. Well, I happen to be their business representative. They asked me to come and share business issues with 191 elected representatives from the SCAG region. And this was one of the studies that I just previewed today about 3 hours ago. And literally you could see all the elected officials lean in. They were so interested in this, not just Orange County, obviously, but every county is very interested in this because they're the ones, our elected officials are the ones that every single, council night, it's person after person lines up to really come at them heavy about say no, when we now have information that helps us say yes. So I just wanted to share that little piece of news that this is really powerful information. Encourage you to get out the word to support the lab and the good work that George and Emily continue to do. And know that I really am very excited for the continuing dialogue and a little bit of extra help to have us move the ball forward. So thank you very much, George, and thank you for the opportunity to share a few closing remarks. Thank you.
I really appreciate that. I would like to remind everybody that we do have a reception, and I hope the questions will continue outside, out that way. But before we all leave, can I please ask for a heartfelt round of applause for Doug Colby, Teresa Hightower and Mimi Cruz. I think I nailed the team that has helped put this event on from the dean's office today and helping me to, I gave them unreasonable deadlines to give me something we could put on the website. Here's some words, make it a little prettier and so forth. So this in many regards was a just-in-time production because, and a big reason is because we had constant feedback from our partners and said, no, yes, you're missing the point here. And we know we have a lot more to learn, and we have learned a lot more today. So again, thank you, Doug, Mimi, Teresa, and please enjoy yourself to some refreshments afterwards. Thank you.